I got my driver's license a while back. I was thrilled, of course, but I didn't have much money for a car. So every time I had a day off, I'd go hunting for something cheap. On my 10th visit to this one used car lot, the owner told me he had a perfect car for me. It was a KI car already been through 10 owners, but it was in great shape, under 10,000 kilometers on the odometer, and it was a manual transmission, which was exactly what I wanted. He said it had never been an accident, but the price was only 70,000 yen, and that included a year of inspection and insurance. I couldn't help myself. I asked him why it was so cheap. He told me he bought several cars at auction and was running out at displace pace, so he wanted to move this one quickly. The owner didn't seem like he was lying to me, so I figured I'd got unlucky. I signed the contract right there, happy as could be. The staff kept emphasizing that I had to come pick up the car in exactly 1 week. I agreed and went home, but right before I was supposed to pick it up, a senior of mine suddenly invited me to a 3-day to night training camp. Since I had to change my plans at the last minute and couldn't go get the car, I called the used car lot and asked if they could deliver it to me. They refused immediately. I was a little annoyed, but I figured they were probably just busy and couldn't spare the time to bring it over. I could understand that, so I told them I'd pay an extra 30,000 yen for delivery. They finally agreed, but I could tell from the voice on the other end of the line that they were very reluctant. After that, I went to the training camp. When it ended, I said goodbye to my senior at the station. I told him that once I got home, I'd drive over and we'd go for a ride together. He said sure, so I walked home quickly, excited to see my new car. But when I got to my house, the parking space out front was empty. I couldn't find my car. I thought maybe my younger brother had taken it out without asking. I was furious. The moment I walked through the door, I asked my mother where my car was. Her face went pale. She told me that the owner of the shop where I bought the car had died inside it, and the police wanted me to contact them as soon as I got back. I was shocked. I called the police right away. They told me to come to the station. At the police station, I gave a statement. They kept asking me about the details of the purchase and where I'd been when the owner died. I started to feel uneasy. I asked them if it was murder. The officer hesitated, then said the cause of death was unknown. In the end, I couldn't get any more information. They sent me away. I didn't want to drive a car someone had died in, so I contacted the used car lot to arrange a return. When I arrived at the office, a woman in mourning clothes walked up to me. She suddenly asked my name. After I told her, she said, "So you're the one who bought the car?" Then she glared at me with vicious eyes and walked out. I found out later she was the owner's wife. During the return process, everyone in the office kept stealing glances at me. It made me very uncomfortable. When the paperwork was almost done, the male clerk helping me suddenly said, "Well, let's go outside and pick out a new car for you. Just choose something similar, and we'll give you the same price. Don't overthink it, it's fine." Then he led me to the showroom. He brought me to the section with new cars priced over 800,000 yen. He told me to pick whichever one I liked. I was completely confused and didn't know what to do. Then the clerk looked at me with an anguished expression and said, "I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I wanted to stop you from buying that car, but I couldn't." After hearing his apology, I felt even more bewildered. From the start, none of this had made any sense. I was uneasy and angry, so I pulled him around to the back of the cars, and under my questioning, he told me something shocking. The clerk said that all the previous owners of that car had met with misfortune. This was the third death. He didn't know where the owner had bought it from, but since the car had arrived at their lot, it had been sold to 4 people, including me. The first 3 owners had all died from illness, hospitalization, suicide, So the car always ended up back here. He said that once, when he was at the shop and sat in the car to move it for maintenance. He felt extremely uneasy. Something felt wrong. At first, he suspected there might be some kind of harmful substance leaking from the air vents or somewhere inside the car. But after checking, he found nothing. Everything was normal. Several of us had pleaded many times with the boss to scrap that ill-meaning fated car, but he never listened. In such tough economic times, none of us employees wanted to risk losing our jobs, so we couldn't be too forceful. We just had to go along with what he decided. The male clerk went on to tell me that the paperwork to scrap the car had finally been completed. Once the police gave their approval, they would get rid of it, finally destroying that cursed vehicle. After hearing about the car's situation, cold sweat broke out on my cheeks. I thought to myself, it was such a relief my senior had invited me to that training camp. Otherwise, I might have ended up buying that dangerous car. That was the terrifying experience I had with my very first car purchase. Sometimes I wonder what misfortune would have befallen me if I had gone to pick it up on time. Could the one who died have been me, and not the boss? No. This next story happened at a stream somewhere in Yamanashi Prefecture. I really enjoy fishing, so every month I go out to fish for yamameche, route or sweet fish along the streams. That day, it was drizzling lightly and the river was swollen. Everyone knows that when the water turns muddy, fishing usually doesn't go well. But since I had taken special leave, I braved it and went fishing anyway. I should mention that in my younger days, around my 20s, I could sense creepy things happening. Like before experiencing sleep paralysis, I would have a feeling that something was coming. But over the years, that sensitivity faded altogether. That day at the stream was the first time in over 10 years I felt that eerie presence again. I sensed it right after passing through a narrow river section filled with rocks, and arriving at a slightly wider spot. The current slowed there, making it almost pool-like. When I got there, I suddenly noticed a white, fatty lump slowly drifting downstream from upstream. At first, I thought it was a piece of discarded foam or camping gear, but that uneasy feeling wouldn't leave me. So I cautiously stopped to take a better look. Almost immediately, I realized that it was humanoid. Its skin was white, and its bald head shiny without a single hair. Where its eyes should have been were two deep black holes, wrinkled and sunken. It floated downstream with a strange hee-hee-hee laugh, like a creepy chuckle. But its body didn't drift gently, it twisted violently, writhing spasmodically as it floated. When it reached a wider, shallower part of the river, it suddenly stood upright and began contorting its body as it ran upstream. Then it started drifting downstream again like before. I figured it must be blind since its eyes were damaged, so it seemed to wander aimlessly. I was frozen, staring at it in disbelief. The creature apparently didn't notice me, but just as I stood there puzzled, feeling nauseated and scared, locals from the nearby highway shouted at me harshly, asking what I was doing down there. They told me something had appeared upstream, but I couldn't make out exactly what they said. Then they urged me to run away immediately. They shouted at me in panic, and I got scared enough to quickly head for the highway. As I moved toward the road, the creature apparently spotted me too. I think it relied on hearing to locate things, because it started moving swiftly in my direction. Then I heard a hiss like a tire losing air, and it twisted its body as it lunged closer. What I felt then was just fear, but extreme disgust and despairing horror. I ran with all my might, reaching the highway. The locals who told me to run were already gone by then. Though I broke fishing rod, it earned $30–600 worth of pride in. I was just immensely relieved to have escaped. Later, I found that some creepy stories mention twisted-bodied creatures in the mountains, though no one really knows what they are. Whatever it was, that unknown presence it gave off was truly terrifying. This happened in September, and since October fishing is banned, I stopped stream fishing for a while. But whenever I think about that disgusting creature, I can't help but feel afraid of returning to the streams next spring. At home, I own an old pump organ that my mother bought secondhand before I was born. Back in elementary school, I tried playing it once, but the pedals were a bit broken, and I never touched it again. And that old organ, well, some truly terrifying things happened with it later on, casting a shadow of unease deep in my heart. It was back in high school, when I was studying in my room on the second floor, preparing for midterm exams, around 1:30 in the morning. I heard the faint sound of the organ coming from the living room downstairs, because the organ's pedals were a little broken. The notes sounded weak and fragile. I don't remember exactly what tune it was playing, but it was familiar, probably a folk song. At home, only my mother knew how to play the organ, but she should have been asleep by then, and at that hour, well, it gave me a creeping sense of fear. I listened for a while. The organ kept playing without stopping, the tune looping endlessly. It was impossible to concentrate on my studying or fall asleep, so I decided I had to go see what was going on. I was scared, so I turned on every light as I walked down the stairs. When I reached the living room door, the organ was still playing and louder than before. I wondered, could it really be my mother? If she had decided to play at this time of night, maybe she was losing her mind. It was strange because logically, it should have been someone from my family playing, but everything felt too eerie. I was full of anxiety. I didn't dare open the door. I stood frozen there, sweat dripping down my forehead. After about 5 minutes, the organ suddenly stopped. The sudden silence felt even more terrifying, like a crushing weight on my chest. My mind raced with thoughts. What if something suddenly bursts through the door? What if I scream or cry out in fright? Oddly enough, I felt an urge, strange pull telling me I had to open the door and check. When I did, the music echoed again in the silent darkness. I jumped, startled. It was too dark to see anything, so I quickly flipped on the light. But there was no one sitting in front of the organ. I was at a loss. Dusence covered me. Cold sweat poured down my back. I was so frightened I turned off the light and fled back upstairs. I hid under my blanket for the rest of the night. The next day, the same thing happened again. After the organ's music stopped, I went down to check, and again, no one was there. I told my mother about it, but she said she didn't know what was going on. Maybe I had been sleepwalking or dreaming. But then on the third night, the organ started playing again. I was still terrified, but that time, I decided I wouldn't hesitate. I would run straight to the living room and find out what was going on. So I raced from my room on the second floor, running down the stairs to the first floor. Before the music could stop, I flung open the living room door and saw a woman sitting at the organ, her back turned to me. She wore a dress, but her head was bald at the back. I was frozen, unable to speak or move. My heart hammered fast, and my whole body broke out in sweat. Then she stopped playing and slowly turned her head around. It took her about 10 seconds to turn so slow. The room was dim, and she was a bit far away, so I couldn't make out her face clearly. But I had a vague sense that her eyes were filled with something, many pins or needles. Her mouth was unnaturally large, and her face was disturbingly strange. But the thing that struck me most was she had no feet. For someone like me who never watches horror movies, the visual shock was overwhelming. Suddenly, she let out a piercing scream. I was paralyzed with fear. I couldn't move and started crying. The scream felt endless, though it only lasted a few seconds. Then, she abruptly stopped and stood there, completely still. At that moment, I realized I could move again. I bolted out of the living room and ran outside, hiding in the yard until dawn. Once I was sure she hadn't followed me, I stayed outside until morning. When day came, I went back inside. No sign of the woman. My family didn't know what had happened. After that night, I never heard the organ play again. I thought it was finally over. But a month later, I was in a serious traffic accident. I crashed my bicycle into a speeding motorcycle. My lower body was paralyzed from then on. Later, I remembered the terrifying woman with no feet, and now, neither could I walk. I couldn't help but link my misfortune with that haunting figure. What terrifies me even more is this: if that woman ever appears again, standing right in front of me, I won't have the power to run away. Before, there was a first-year high school girl living in the countryside. On her birthday, her parents bought her a cell phone to celebrate. The girl was very happy, but at that time, cell phones weren't yet widespread, especially in rural areas, and none of her friends around her had one. But one day, her phone received a text message. It said something like, "I want a friend to exchange messages with." So I randomly added some numbers and sent this to you. If possible, I hope we can become text message friends. That girl gladly accepted the unknown sender's invitation. From that day on, she sent messages back and forth every day. During their exchanges, she found out that the other person was a boy, a second-year high school student. Bit by bit, she grew attracted to this boy close to her own age. Even though she chatted with him for a while, she never knew where he lived, and he was reluctant to talk about those kinds of personal details. One day, she finally decided to ask him, "I want to hear your voice. Could we talk directly on the phone?" There was a pause, then a reply: "I'd like that too. He'll call you around tonight." The girl felt happy. She thought about what she might say when they talked, and she waited for 8 o'clock to come. When the clock struck 8, the phone rang. Wanting to remember this first call, she used the recording function and talked with him for the first time. They enjoyed their conversation so much that before she knew it, it was 9:30. She said, "It's late now. Let's talk again next time," then hung up. After the call, she tried to recall their conversation, but for some reason, she just couldn't remember anything. All she knew was that talking to him had been really fun. With the tension of the first call easing, she started feeling sleepy. She lay down on her bed and quickly fell asleep. But then, late at night, her mother's sudden shout woke her up. "What are you doing?" her mother yelled. Startled, the girl realized she was standing by the window. She had almost fallen out of the second-floor window. The clock showed 2 o'clock. Her mother had come rushing in after hearing noises from her room. She didn't know why she had tried to climb over the window railing. Suddenly, she remembered the phone call with that boy, and because she had recorded it, she decided to listen to their conversation. After playing the recording, her whole body began to tremble uncontrollably, because in the call, all she heard him say over and over was, "At 2 o'clock tonight, you will jump out the window. Go die." Last autumn, I learned by chance that Shoji, a friend from my university days, had created a website. Shoji and I hadn't been close friends, but since we shared a passion for motorcycles, we'd occasionally gone on trips together in college. His website was mostly about his hobbies and diary like entries. Seeing Shoji's smiling face riding his motorcycle, just as he had back then, I felt like reaching out to him, so I sent him an email greeting. I received a quick reply. I learned he stayed at the university doing research and was now an assistant professor in his hometown. Since my own work was also research related and near his field, despite almost 10 years without contact, we quickly reconnected. We began exchanging messages on weekends and during breaks. About 3 months into this, Shoji sent me a text: "Hey, do you still remember 1010 cafeteria from our college days? Actually, last weekend, I went to the city where our old university was. I got there a day late, but the cafeteria's auntie is still working hard. I had the nostalgic fried pork cutlet rice bowl. The taste and auntie were just the same as before. Eating it, Tears of emotion welled up in my eyes and Auntie's too. I told her about you. She still remembers you. She held my hand tight and said, "Next time, bring him with you. When the weather warms up, well, all go back to 1010 cafeteria for pork cutlet rice bowls." 1010 cafeteria was near our old university, a place born for students where Shoji and I were regulars. Not long after I graduated, I heard from others that the cafeteria owner had died in an accident, leaving only Auntie to keep the place running. Because I was shaken by that event and by the message Shoji had sent me, I found myself wanting to ride a motorcycle with renewed passion. So I started going out on weekends, hunting for a used bike at a reasonable price. But ever since that message, Shoji hadn't contacted me again. I was busy with work, and I figured Shoji was probably busy with life too. So I pushed aside thoughts of motorcycles and Auntie from 1010 Diner for a while. A month passed. Then two. Still no sign of Shoji. The website we used to check, which updated every 3 days, seemed to have stopped updating altogether. That made me uneasy. One day, on a day off, I decided to call Shoji's home, but it wasn't Shoji who answered. It was a middle-aged woman. I told her I was Shoji's college friend and gave my name. The woman told me she was Shoji's mother. Her voice was low and tired as she said Shoji had died the previous month. Hearing those words sent a shock through me. I was stunned. For a moment, I couldn't even speak. I managed a few words of comfort over the phone and asked if I could visit to pay respects. We arranged a time. On my next day off, I went to Shoji's hometown. Her parents still seemed crushed by the loss. I sat before the family shrine, hands clasped, then gently asked about how Shoji had died. Her mother remained silent, head bowed. Shoji's father spoke up. Shoji had committed suicide. Her mother covered her face with a handkerchief, sobbing. She couldn't have done that, she couldn't. She repeated herself several times, disbelief and grief thick in her voice. Her father then asked me if I had any idea why Shoji might have taken her own life. I drew a blank, was silent. He went on, saying no one understood why she chose to end her life in the city where she went to college. After hearing all this and grasping the situation, I said my goodbyes and left. Something felt off, so instead of going straight home, I drove to the city where our university was. By the time I arrived, dusk had fallen. I had no time to reminisce over the streets. I went straight to my old apartment building. Nothing had changed. The neighborhood was the same. Shoji's old apartment across the block looked unchanged too. I wandered nearby for a bit, stopping in front of one house. The former first floor of a regular residence had been converted into a shop. Next to it was 1010 Diner, still standing as usual, but it looked closed for good. I lingered by the diner for a while. Then a middle-aged woman emerged from the house across the street. I went over and greeted her. She looked startled at first, but relaxed when I explained I had lived in this area during university. She said something like, "At this hour, standing here still, I thought you were just here to see some excitement." I gave her a puzzled look. She continued, "Don't you know? Last month, a man hanged himself inside that place. Nobody knows why someone would hang themselves in an empty storefront. Exactly 1 year ago to this day, the owner of that diner hanged herself inside too. The neighbors all say it's like something's pulling them." Then she said more, but my mind was blank. I caught her exact words. After learning the truth, I left and went back home. Suddenly I came down with a fever lasting several days, and even took 2 sick days from work. Looking back, the whole thing was really eerie. What had really happened to Shoji? The diner's owner had clearly died long ago, so why did Shoji tell me in her message that she had gone there and eaten the fried pork cutlet bowl? She said she had chatted at length with Auntie. Even today, it's a mystery I can't solve. This spooky event happened while I was still in university. At the time, I needed a printer for a report. One weekend, I was wandering Akihabara with a friend and found a used black and white laser printer in a second-hand shop, priced at 9,800 yen. I thought it hit the jackpot. The printer looked almost new and even came with a warranty. I felt lucky and bought it on the spot. I carried it back to my apartment, installed the drivers, and started a test print. I clicked test print and then went to the bathroom, leaving my friend watching the printer. But my friend noticed something strange. The printer, which should have printed just one test page, didn't stop. It kept churning out page after page. The printer kept churning through every single sheet I had loaded into it, only stopping once the paper tray was completely empty, and the computer screen showed no signs of any printing errors. My friend grabbed one of the freshly printed pages and took a look, then suddenly let out a shout. On the paper was the image of a woman's face. The outline was sharp, but the hair, eyes, and mouth were clearly black and well defined. It looked almost like she was glaring right at us. That sent a chill down both our spines. What was even stranger was that each page had a slightly different version of the image. No two were exactly alike. I was baffled, so I tried printing a random plain text file next. But nothing unusual happened. Just as I was trying to wrap my head around this strange test print, suddenly the printer started printing on its own again. My friend and I jumped in surprise. What came out on the sheets this time was a message: "Why did you abandon me?" The words made the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. I was truly terrified. My friend urged me to return the printer to the store immediately, but by then it was almost closing time, so I decided to wait until the next day. Still, I felt there was something weird, almost cursed about this printer. So I asked my friend to help me move it to our university's club activity room. At first, he refused outright. No way did he want to get involved with that thing. Only when I promised to treat him to dinner did he begrudgingly agree. The next day, as I was getting ready to haul the printer out of the club room, I noticed a junior member staring at me with a confused expression. He asked, "Senpai, did you stay overnight here last night?" I gave him one of those "are you kidding me" looks. My face probably said it all. He said the reason he asked was that when he came early that morning, he found a notice pinned to the door, a warning from the student committee reminding everyone not to spend the night in the club room. I told him to check with the other members to see if anyone had secretly stayed overnight. Then I put the printer on a cart and left. Later, I went back to the shop to try and return the printer. The clerk tested it thoroughly but found nothing wrong, so they refused to accept the return. Since I couldn't return it and didn't want the thing anyway, I suddenly asked them, "Well then, can you at least buy it back from me?" In the end, they agreed to buy it back for 3,000 yen. Back at the university, my junior